This is the city. It's a big one. I'm a cop. It was Monday, October 23rd. We were working the day watch. My partner's Ben Romero. The boss is Captain Carney. My name's Friday.
Well, folks, you think the big heat pump con is something. You should have been with me today at the Ottawa courthouse, at the provincial courthouse. And let's never forget who's behind this prosecution, this persecution of Tamara, Lich, and Chris Barber. It's ultimately the provincial government of Ontario. It's Doug Ford's courtroom. Can't emphasize that enough. This was an incredible day of incredible things that I heard in this courtroom. Now, I have to admit, now I'll confess, I went there this morning at the 10 o'clock start thinking there was going to be one day and this was going to be sentencing time. Quickly found out that this is a 3-day sentencing hearing. So we're not going to have a sentence for either Chris or Tamara till at least mid-August. And then you think, well, 3 more days of lawyers talking about whether or not this is really worth pursuing. But what I heard from the prosecution, the Crown today, was just incredible. They said that they did extraordinary things. They did really bad things. And they need to be punished for doing these bad things. In fact, the Crown lawyer said they're criminally responsible for extraordinary harm. And that deserves an extraordinary sentence. So this is just the beginning. Can you say, well, where did this all come from? Well, it's all from this document here. And I got a copy from Lawrence Greenspan. And you can see it right here. Hope you can see that on your screen. This is what I got today. And this is the basis of the Crown saying that Tamara Lich and Chris Barber should be getting 7 to 8 years in prison because what they did was extraordinarily harmful. And you think, well, how can this be? But here, I'll tell you, I'll read it. Here's the key phrase in this document, which, as I said, is the Crown submissions on sentencing. For this and the reasons set out below, having regard to the nature, duration, impact, and context of the offenses, as well as the circumstances of the offenders, blah, 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 the Crown is seeking a period of incarceration of 7 years on the count of mischief for each Lich and Barber, and 1 year consecutive for counseling others to disobey a court order for Barber. In addition, the Crown also seeks a forfeiture order pursuant to Section 490.1, Paragraph 1 of the Code for a red 2004 Kenworth truck with license plate 639FCZ. Canada, Saskatchewan. Vehicle identification number. Well, anyway, I won't read that. This is the big red truck, registered to CB Trucking Limited, a company owned by Barber. So they want to take away his truck. They want to put him in jail for 8 years. And this is what we heard all day from the prosecution. And you know what? I saw something on the way home tonight saying that the mainstream media were kicked out of the courtroom. That's absolute bullshit. No, the mainstream media has been there from day one. And I tell you, even the CBC has become increasingly sympathetic with Chris Barber and Tamara Lich because the prosecution, the Crown, has done a horrible job of depicting them as some sort of terrible people. But I can tell you today we heard some great testimony, some great arguments from the defense. We haven't, Lawrence Greenspan didn't even have a chance to get up today because it was all dominated by Chris Barber's lawyer. And there were some fascinating tidbits came up. For instance, the mainstream media falsely reported that Chris Barber had a death in the family. But no, it wasn't. That's the reason one of the legal team members from the prosecution, the Crown, wasn't there. He had a death in the family. And this is the sort of crap that's been repeated from day one in this trial. Nobody seems to be getting it right. Now, this is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You all know who Paul Champ is. I don't have a lot of time for Paul Champ. But Paul Champ is the guy who's leading this mass lawsuit against the Freedom Convoy. And it could inevitably or eventually involve anybody who supported the Freedom Convoy. It's a crazy lawsuit. And judge after judge has let this thing go by. But Paul Champ actually says this: Lich and Barber sentencing will take place this week. And actually, it probably won't. He's wrong about that. There's no question it was serious, and they have spent 3 years showing the opposite of remorse for what they did to the people of Ottawa. But an 8-year sentence is ridiculous. Well, we agree on that one. In my opinion, no custody for Lich, 6 months for Barber. Okay, Paul, we're with you there. But what about showing no remorse? Well, our good friend at Right Blends, as you go on about the inconveniences to the residents of Ottawa. I'm born and raised here. This is my city too, and Ottawa belongs to all Canadians as our capital. Very good point. The COVID mandates and restrictions were nonsensical and punitive. People were arrested peacefully protesting them. And not only that, we heard some limited testimony during this trial that has almost gone now for 2 years. 2 years. And we heard people, fairly affluent looking business people from the market area of Ottawa, talk about how horribly impacted they were by the Freedom Convoy. And, you'd have to be a fool to really think that any economic hardship that occurred in February 2022 had anything really to do with the Freedom Convoy protest, because they weren't telling people not to shop. They weren't barricading the doors. They weren't threatening the residents or threatening shoppers to not go into stores. Quite the reverse. Some stores made a lot of money. I heard that from a lot of business owners, and I was on the street during the entire protest. That's the reality, folks. But what was the problem with the lockdowns that made Ottawa a business desert during that period of COVID? From 2020 to 2022, Ottawa was under severe and rolling lockdowns. That's what killed the businesses in the downtown core. Sorry if I'm getting excited about this, but I'm just sick of the bullshit, and I have to use. Sometimes I have to swear a little bit to get the point across. So Chris Barber was there via Zoom today, and he thanked Pierre Poilievre. Thank you, Pierre. We've been waiting so long for elected officials to speak up. You're damn right you've been waiting a long time, far too long. But Pierre Poilievre said, let's get this straight. While rampant violent offenders are released hours after their most recent charges, and anti-Semitic rioters vandalize businesses, terrorize daycares, and block traffic without consequences, the Crown wants 7 years for Tamara Lich and 8 for Chris Barber. Absolutely. And I showed you these. This is the basis of what the Crown is saying. This is the entire basis of what the Crown is saying. And I've got more for you. I've got absolutely more for you because this is incredible. I like this from Tokyo Rosie. Their crime isn't mischief. Their crime is pissing off the ruling Laurentian elites. This has nothing to do with the rule of law. Now, I think one of the most fascinating things I heard today and this is Tamara Lich's response to what the Crown wants. And I posted on X early this morning that I couldn't believe how the rhetoric from the Crown had been ramped up so much and was completely detached from reality. Completely. There was nothing in what the Crown was saying that had anything to do, any semblance of relationship to reality. It was absolutely ridiculous. This trial, as I said, has gone on now for 1 year and 10 months. And it could actually go full 2 years before these people know what their fate is. But in that time period, this trial has cost taxpayers millions of dollars. We don't even know how much it's cost, but you can be damn well sure that after 2 years of lawfare like this, with all of this research going on, all of this time, court time, government lawyers, at the judge's time, it's millions of dollars. And it's cost Chris Barber and Tamara Lich a lot of money. Yes, they've been getting some donations. Yes, they've been helped to some degree. But you don't get this back. All of the time, going back and forth, it's impacted Chris Barber's business in a huge way. And in fact, his lawyer, Ms. Magus, said today that if Chris Barber receives a criminal conviction, and she's arguing that he should have a conditional discharge. If he gets a criminal conviction, he's going to lose 60% of his business because he will no longer be able to travel to the United States, where 60% of his business is conducted. Now, Ms. Magus also talked about how Chris Barber has also been affected by his participation in the Freedom Convoy, how he's been affected economically, financially. And you know what? It seemed some of it came as a bit of a surprise to Judge Heather Perkins McVeigh. And I've said from the beginning that she appears at times to be very fair. Other times she really is indicating that she doesn't really like what these two people did. And I think as a member of the Laurentian elite, as judges in Ottawa all are, I think she really thought these people got out of hand. Just too much. So the killer today, the kicker, is when Chris Barber's lawyer is explaining how he was financially assaulted because of his participation in the Freedom Convoy. The judge said, well, can you give me some examples? And she said, well, he had his bank accounts, not just his personal and his business accounts, frozen for 2 months. And the judge said, really? The judge was not aware that people associated with the Freedom Convoy had their bank accounts frozen. And as I'm sure you all know, it wasn't just organizers like Chris and Tamara or Tom Marazzo who had their bank accounts frozen. it was anybody who donated, and in some cases, anybody who actively supported the Freedom Convoy and the goals of that Freedom Convoy. And I had to just, and as the judge expressed disbelief that bank accounts were frozen, she then said, well, who ordered that? And I sort of whispered, her name was Chrystia Freeland. And of course, she was acting on the orders of Justin Trudeau and the advice of the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney. So how does that strike you? I would say there's some indication that judges in Ottawa might be a little detached from reality or what some ordinary people had to go through. When I said that, Tamara, I was sitting right behind Tamara Lich during the trial today. And I sort of, I said under my breath, you're kidding. And I said, it was Chrystia Freeland who gave the order. You don't know that? And Tamara Lich got back to me via text. And she said, because I said, I posted, judge at Freedom Convoy trial was unaware that protesters had their bank accounts frozen and wondered who gave the order to do it. And Tamara Lich sent me a text that says, this was weird, right? Yeah, it was weird. That's the kind of day it was. Now, I'm probably going back tomorrow, and I want to get a little more feedback from the defense counsels. And tomorrow, Lawrence Greenspan is up, and we'll hear what he has to say in defense of Tamara Lich. But for a lot of people there today, it's like they were in absolute shock that the Crown is serious about wanting to put these people in jail for 7 or 8 years. It's absolutely shocking. But I talked to Tamara as we were waiting for the doors to open at around 10 a.m. this morning. And I said, how are you feeling? And she says, just great. Just great. I win either way. This is somebody who really believes they did the right thing. And you know what? Chris Barber's lawyer said today, a lot of Canadians view Chris Barber and Tamara as heroes because they dared to stand up to the COVID mandates, the lockdowns, and the government's authoritarian attitudes, suppression. They dared to put their careers, their freedom on the line. They said, we believe in a free Canada, and we're going to fight for that free Canada. And yes, I view them as heroes. Why do I view them as heroes? Because by alleviating the pressure of the lockdowns, by getting the mandates gradually pulled back so that people weren't forced to get the vax. They eventually had the freedom to make that decision without being negatively impacted by not being able to work, by not being able to travel, by not being able to go to the gym, by not being able to go to the store, by not being able to feed themselves. By alleviating that pressure, I think Chris and Tamara saved lives. And I think that makes them heroes. Yes, 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 I do. And I think it's quite clear. Now, I want to show you this video because, frankly, it's a little hard to believe. And I'll come back to Chris and Tamara after I show you this because this absolutely amazed me. There's a new love affair, my friends. There's a new bromance, and it's between Doug Ford and Mark Carney. And it rivals that wonderful bromance that went on between Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau. Remember how Doug used to stand next to Justin at all of those key moments? Even when Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, Doug Ford was there for him. First premier to put his support in writing on X was Doug Ford. And he couldn't say enough about how heroic Justin Trudeau was to crush the Freedom Convoy. He thought that was just quite acceptable. So it should come as no surprise that, hey, here's our boys. What really was discussed between Mark Carney and Doug Ford during their sleepover at the cottage next to next to the fire. Oh yeah, it's so cute. Yeah, it's really, really cute. And I want to show you. I got another one here. I wanted to bring down for you because you can't make this up, folks. You can't make this up. It's like, you know, there they are. Bert and Ernie's Great Adventure. This is beautiful. Oh yeah, and the last one, I wanted to thank Mark Nixon for that. But this is just a work of art here. Yeah. And another shot of these two together, just enjoying themselves, just enjoying each other. It makes you wonder how Ontario ever got a man like Doug Ford leading them. And of course, he still pretends to be a real conservative. Is he? No. Sorry, I hate to chew ice, but it was a long day. But here's a nice little video for you. And this, I think, encapsulates the wonderful relationship between Doug Ford and Mark Carney.
Okay, so full disclosure, Prime Minister stayed at my place. We had dinner. We were up till 12:30 at night, chatting in front of the fireplace, solving all the world's problems.
And he's got a very nice small chalet.
Yeah. I have a little shack up down the street there. And do you know what it is? Yeah, I'm telling you, I haven't known him for long, but the Prime Minister is the most humble person you'd ever want to meet. Let me just give you a little background. Now you got me on a roll here. Okay, the Prime Minister was a Goldman Sachs guy. He worked on Bay Street. He was the chair of Brookfield, which I think is close to $1 trillion fund. Chair of Bloomberg, everyone knows Bloomberg. Bank of Canada governor, Bank of England governor. He has never said that in his entire time I've known him. He doesn't do that. He's very humble. He listens. He's a smart business person. And I always tell my business owners, who would you give the keys to? I'd hand the keys to a business over to the Prime Minister. He's business-minded. He has his hands full because of the last 10 years of what has happened.
Well, I just got to stop you, Dougie. So you'd give the keys to Mark Carney. Well, that's exactly what he's done. In fact, he's put his hand in your pocket and taken the keys already, but you're too stupid to know that. Mark Carney's not a good businessman. No, he's very good at using his political influence to make money. That's what Mark Carney specializes in. But he's such a humble man. Well, Mark Carney has a lot to be humble about. As do you, Doug Ford. You've got loads to be humble about. But this is incredible. He's in fact, this reminds me of Mark Carney virtually getting on his knees before Donald Trump and telling him he was the greatest president in the history of the United States, a transformational leader. Obviously, Doug Ford has learned by example. But he's not done yet.
in our country. He's playing cleanup right now, and we're going to be there to support him. But he's a very good man. He's off to a good start. He's an honest man too. He just wants the best for Canada. He doesn't need to be doing this, I can assure you that. But he's given it everything he possibly can, and I think that's a consensus around the table. He's trying. He's a very smart, shrewd businessman. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Doug Ford, for that honest appraisal of honest Mark Carney. It's incredible to listen to this man wax on with such eloquence. No, this is nauseating to listen to. But Mark Carney is not only an honest man, he's the right man for the job. And Doug Ford trusts him. So we all better get on board and trust Mark Carney, because Doug Ford trusts him, and Doug Ford knows best. And it's hard to believe that Doug Ford had the gall to stand up and tell not just Canadians, but conservatives who know better, that Mark Carney, yeah, he doesn't need to do this, except he does. Maybe he doesn't need to make another $10 million or however much he's worth. He's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars with all of the investments, all of the conflicts of interest that he's involved with. I would say easily. But no, he doesn't need to do this to make another $10 million. He needs to do this, as far as he's concerned, because he loves the power. And he loves to tell you how to live. And he's part of that globalist crowd that want to lord it over you and tell you how to live and say, hey, I'm going to drive the fastest cars. I'm going to live in the biggest homes. I'm going to eat the juiciest steaks. And I'm going to drink the oldest scotch. And you, you got nothing. And that's what Mark Carney is all about. And that's why he thinks, yes, he has to do this. So what do I think is going to happen the rest of the week here? And I'm not even sure whether it's going to be Thursday and Friday, or it's going to be Thursday and they come back Monday. No more about that tomorrow. But what do I think is going to happen? I tell you, when the Crown has the unmitigated gall to say that two peaceful protesters who didn't hurt anybody, who didn't destroy anything, who didn't occupy any private or public property, who didn't do anything harmful, except actually save lives. When the establishment in this country wants to lock these people up for almost a decade, I'm worried. I'm worried that we have lost control over the judicial system in this country, and it's going to run roughshod over all of us. The way the judge was talking today, it's hard, yes, very hard to tell. But I was very concerned about how she kept pushing back every time Chris Barber's lawyer pointed out what he had gone through. Many Canadians consider him a hero. She really didn't seem very receptive to that idea. And I have to be honest with you, that worried me. That really did worry me. But, so I want you to keep Chris and Tamara in your prayers. And don't let this pass. Make sure your politicians understand that this is unacceptable. Because at the basis, at the root of this document that attempts to justify the incarceration of Chris Barber and Tamara Lich is the idea that these people are essentially political renegades because they oppose the narrative. They're being viewed as political prisoners. We've said that from day one of this trial. We said that from the beginning of the suppression of the Freedom Convoy. We said that when the Emergencies Act was invoked against them. And it's quite clear that's what this is all about. These people are being viewed as political opponents of the government, and they're being punished. Lawfare taking away Chris Barber's truck. That's not just insult to injury. That's injury to injury. And it's absolutely disgraceful. So we'll have more about this tomorrow, and I'll be right back after this brief message. Thanks for watching Stand on Guard today. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all of you who came up to me today at the trial and said, I watch your show every day. I love it. Thanks for the work you do. And a lot of the people I met today, I have not seen at this trial before. I've not run into when I'm out and about, either where I live or when I'm downtown Ottawa. So it was so nice for these people to come up, because when you tell me that, it not only warms my heart, it encourages me to keep going. And believe me, there have been days when I've said it's not worth it. They're few and far between, but there have been days, and your encouragement keeps me going. Thank you. And your support keeps this station going. So please like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family, because if you don't share it, I can guarantee you, YouTube is not doing it. I'll be back again tomorrow. Have a great night. God bless this country, and Godspeed to all of you. This has been David Krayden, broadcasting live from Ottawa. See you all back tomorrow.